Hello, this video is about solving quadratics by factoring part 1. We will get part 2 probably next week. So when we say solving, what we're doing is we're looking or solving for the x-intercepts for the zeros. And we factor, the method we use to factor is tic-tac-toe. So if you want to write that up there, tic-tac-toe, you can. Okay, so we're just going to do 2 examples in this video. Example 1 is, let's say I have x squared minus 2x equals 35. Well, first off, this is not in standard form. We need this to equal 0. So what would I do to make 35 equal 0? Well, I would subtract 35. 35 minus 35 is 0. But then I have to move that to the other side. And I'm going to place that at the end of the equation because that's a constant. So this is in standard form, and this portion right here is what I will tic-tac-toe. So I have 1 and negative 35. I multiply those, and then I list the factors of 35. 1 and 35. 2 doesn't go in there. 3 doesn't go in there. 4 doesn't. 5 and 7 will. And I think that's it. I'm looking for the pair that gives me negative 2. So let's talk about all this. If C, this number right here, is negative, these will have different signs. So one will be negative and one will be positive. And if B is negative, the bigger number will be negative. This would equal negative 34, and this equals negative 2. So which pair will I use? That pair. So I list those in here. Again, this should be easy and redundant because this is what we learned last week. That should all be easy. So if you needed to pause the video and like kind of work through that, you can. This is where something is new. In a previous video, you should have learned about what's called the zero product property. And basically that means if I have 2 expressions and they are equal to 0, one of these 2 factors has to also equal 0. So what we do is we set the first factor equal to 0, and then we set the second factor equal to 0. And you should know how to do this from a previous video earlier on this week. Okay, then I solve for x, so I'm going to subtract by 5. And then I solve for x here, so I'm going to add 7 because those would cancel. So there are my 2 zeros. There's my answers. Okay, so example number 2. X squared minus 11x plus 28. Is that in standard form? Yes. So I am going to create my tic-tac-toe square. A, C, A times C. The factors of that number. So I want you to pause the video and list the factors of the number of 28. You have 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7. I think that's it. And I'm looking for the pair that gives me which of these numbers? Negative 11. If this is positive, both of these factors have to have the same sign. So they're either both going to be positive or both negative. If this is negative, they'll be both negative. So that would give you negative 29. That would give you negative 16, and that would give you negative 11. So here's the pair I will use. Again, pause the video and fill out the rest of this table. So the two factors are x minus 4 and x minus 7. And then I use the zero product property to solve for this. So I'm going to set this whole expression equal to 0. Then what you do is you take each factor and set those factors equal to 0 and solve for x from both factors. So I'm going to add 4 here, add 7 here. So x equals, those cancel, 4 and 7. So if I was to graph this, and you could do this, you can use your Desmos calculator, your Desmos graphing calculator. If I was to graph this, this equation would cross at 4 and at 7. It would look like that, something like that. This one would cross at -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the vertex would be halfway between those two, so somewhere right there. Okay, and so if you were to graph this equation, this one right here, or if you were to graph this right here, you should get the same graph, and it should look something kind of like that. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and let me know.